hey everybody. I am here today with Laura Pipkin. Thank you so much for joining me, Laura. She's such a delightful lady, and her family are the owners, proprietors of Camp Waldemar, and Laura was the chef, cook, in charge of kitchen.
Head of dining hall messes, sure.
Okay, for like 10 years?
It was just shy of 10 years.
For 10 years, so quite a while. And during that period of time, you learned a lot about what the girls loved.
Yes.
You loved to try to create things that they did enjoy.
Absolutely.
And tell us what we're doing. Well, first of all, I want to show the cookbook that Laura wrote. So,
and you can get my much beloved copy from my own kitchen.
Yeah, there you go. See, she has definitely used her own cookbook.
Yeah.
You can get this on Amazon. I own one. I love it. I have referred to it several times. I have not found a recipe in here that is not amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you can also buy it directly from Camp Waldemar. Their store has copies.
And then tell me a little bit about this adorable box.
Well,
very vintage.
Yes, very vintage. One of the things that's special about Waldemar, and especially about the dining hall program, is that it's a skill-based camp, and they want girls to learn things that, and when it started in 1926, it was all about young ladies learning to be young ladies, but also being able to shoot a gun and canoe and ride horses and all the things that in the day were really only available for boys. And in 1928, 2 years after the camp started, they hired Lucille Smith and her husband, U.S., and they are from Fort Worth, and they both were, beautifully brilliant people, and came in and worked until, about I think U.S. may have died before Lucille finished, but she worked until the early 70s.
Wow.
And she produced a book. Well, it's a treasure chest. So I'm going to show the camera. It's got index cards, and they're separated by sections, and each one has, one recipe on it: baked squash with almonds. And it's really, I know. And so I think her first edition came out in the early 40s, and this is 1960s. I think it's a fourth edition. One of the things that's special to know about Lucille Smith is that she's considered one of the 100 most influential women in the history of the state of Texas.
That is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And her great-grandsons opened a restaurant as an homage to her in Houston, and it's called Lucille's. And they have pictures of her on the walls. She cooked for presidents. She cooked for dignitaries, famous people, and all in a time when a woman of color was not expected to be as successful as she was. My first year, 2013, and my second year, 2014, I had a large number of hires from Ukraine, and they would make the Ukrainian borscht, which is a little different from Russian borscht. The ingredients are slightly different, but essentially the same recipe. But it was very different from the borscht that I was familiar with, which was a cold beet soup that was pureed. And
that's what I think about borscht being.
I know. And so I remember the first time they made it, I was like, what are you doing? This is amazing. So today I'm going to make this Ukrainian borscht, and the first thing we want to start with is to cut the meat into kind of bite-sized cubes. And as it's cooking, of course, it'll shrink down a little bit, but you don't want to make it so small that you don't have a nice bite. So I've found too that these are already pretty cleanly trimmed. There's a lot of flavor in the fat, so I don't trim it off, but if that's something that you want to do, you certainly can. So I'm going to cut them into kind of a cube shape, and then we'll put it in our cook pot and cover it with water. They said the most important part of this whole soup is the skimming. So I'm going to cover this with water. I'm going to put between 8 and 10 cups is what I'm going to kind of go for. It ends up with a ton of vegetables, so it's nice to have the broth. I'm going to let the broth start to simmer. And as it cooks, it's going to let off a lot of foam. And this was one of the key points that the kids that worked for me would always stress. This is where you get your pretty broth. So you want to keep that foam undisturbed as it comes up. Skim it off. So you may see me coming back and forth. It's going to probably cook for about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll add some of the spices. We're going to add juniper berries and bay leaves. All of the vegetables are going to be prepared in the food processor, but if you don't have a food processor, you can do it by hand. The onions are going to be minced kind of fine, not pureed, but chopped pretty fine. The beets, the carrots, and the well, really the beets and the carrots are going to be grated. And so I'm going to use the grater on the food processor because it speeds things up considerably. Oil, and we're just going to cook the onions until they are translucent and have released their fragrance. But just a little pinch of salt. Starting to caramelize, and the kids normally would take them out before they had actually caramelized. Can you see that in there? But we let them go a little long. Sometimes it kind of helps layer the flavor of the soup. So if you don't want them to go quite that long, you certainly don't have to. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to grate some carrots. A little bit more oil, and I'm just going to saute the carrots until they're tender. And it's only a few minutes. And so while these are cooking down, I'll get the beets ready. And so what I'm trying to do is to really just get as much of the top foam skimmed off and not give the soup broth too much of a disturbance. So we want to just get as much, excuse me, of the foam off, and it'll continue to cook. And as it cooks, we're getting flavor from the meat. So I think the carrots are now ready. They have just sauteed for about 5 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and add them to the pot with the onions. And we're gonna set them aside and get ready for the beets. So I'm gonna add the beets. The beets I have grated, and this is a little bit different. We're gonna add a little red wine vinegar, a little tomato paste, and sugar. But first I'm gonna let the beets cook down a little bit and soften up before I add the flavor. I'll add a little pinch of salt, and then we're gonna add some of the vinegar, the tomato paste, and the sugar. I'm gonna take a break from the stove for a minute and show you how I like to prepare my tomatoes. Now the tomatoes are already processed. You can get them in sauce and you can get them chopped and all that different stuff. But I found, and I learned this from my best friend who's from Italy, that if you have the whole peeled tomatoes and you just crush them with your hands, and I kind of do it down low because they splurt, but you get this nice texture, and somehow or another, it just seems to have better flavor. Our broth has simmered down. We've skimmed off as much of the foam as we can. We've let it simmer with just the bay leaf and the juniper berries. Now I'm gonna add all the other vegetables that I've prepared, and then we're gonna let it continue to cook. So I have my sauteed vegetables that I've got in the large pan. I'm gonna go ahead and add those. And in they go. Careful not to. I've got my crushed tomatoes, which is going to add to your broth, which is great. Now I've got the potatoes, and I cut them off camera, but they're not super big. They're not real small. Tried to keep them as close in size as I could, so they'll cook about the same amount of time. And I'm going to add the cabbage. And I did the half a head, and I've just shredded. Our soup is ready. We adjust the flavor with a little salt and a little more red wine vinegar. One of the garnishes, which is optional, is to grate a little fresh garlic into it, but we have bypassed that. We've got a dollop of sour cream and some fresh dill, and we're gonna give it a taste.
It's so beautiful. Oh my God, and it smells so good in here. I wish you all could smell what I am enjoying
all those
right
vegetables.
now.
I know.
Oh, all these vegetables. Here he goes. Mmm. Mmm.
It's really good.
Laura, this has been so much fun preparing this borscht together. I just enjoyed this immensely, and learning more about Waldemar and all the wonderful things that happened there and the girls. And anyway, we have a tradition at Texicureans that when we cook together, you are a Texicurean. We'll slip down a little bit. It says everything tastes better in Texas.
I love it. It's fantastic. Well, it's been a great honor. I'm so thrilled, and I'm so happy to share a little bit about the wonderful history of Waldemar and our
100 years.
I know.
We forgot to say 100 years this year.
It's very
How was
exciting.
that for a history?
Very exciting in the state of Texas. It's almost as old as the state.
Right, that's right. Thank you so much.
Oh, super fun. Thank you.
Super fun.